black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
The first woman that the U.S. ever labeled a terrorist was not a bomber or a spy or an evil mastermind. She was a black woman who wrote poetry, taught political education, and fought for her people. Her name was Assata Shakur, and the government feared her ideas more than any weapon, because her weapon was her mind. She came out of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army, not just marching, but studying, teaching political classes in Harlem, running breakfast programs, showing people how oppression is not random, it is designed, especially in the United States of America. She told poor black people that they had the right to defend themselves. She told women that they had the right to lead. She told America that if you can spend billions on war, you can afford to feed your own fucking people. And that's when the state decided that she was too dangerous. Not because of what she did, but because of what she understood. In 1973, she was pulled over on the New Jersey Turnpike, right here in my state. Police opened fire. A trooper died. Assata was shot twice, one bullet through her arm, one through her back, while her hands were raised. Medical experts said she could not have fired a gun, but an all-white jury convicted her anyways. They called her a murderer, but they really wanted was a symbol, somebody to make an example out of. So they locked her in a men's prison. They stripped her of her name, her dignity, her body, and she still refused to break. Then, in 1979, she escaped, not with bombs, not with bloodshed, but with community, with people who refused to let her die behind bars for something that she did not do. She disappeared into the wind and resurfaced in Cuba, where the revolution welcomed her home. Decades later, the U.S. government tosses her on the FBI's most wanted terrorists list. A poet, a teacher, a mother. Her name on the same list as actual mass murderers. And a reward, $2 million for her capture. Because the most powerful nation on earth could not stomach the idea that there existed a free black woman who saw through every single one of their lies. Her book, Assata, an autobiography, became a must-read text for organizers across the world. Assata's life is a mirror held up to America. It shows that you don't have to carry a gun to scare these people either. You just have to wake up the people that it depends on keeping asleep. They called her a terrorist, and we call her a teacher, a mother of the movement, proof that ideas are harder to kill than people. Assata Shakur was not running from justice, she was running towards it. She passed away 2 weeks ago in Havana, Cuba. Rest in peace, Assata.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. This is part two of a two-part series that I started on the Black Panther Party. You can see two books here that I base my topics on, two great books. Every time I do a show, I use my receipts, the books that I read, and there are others, but these are books. This one over here that's being shown is a graphic novel form. Very well done. You see, I think Eldridge Cleaver and there Huey P. Newton, you know, and brother who was assassinated in Fred Hampton there on the right, and the Black Panther Party was the equal opportunity when it comes to women. So you see Eldridge Cleaver's wife there, Vanessa Cleaver, and this one on my right here or your left. Is against the blacks against the empire. The empire is not something nebulous place. We talk about the United States empire because they were activists. And for those of you who are new to the show, my name is Keith Smokey Johnson, and this is the Umoja Circle. I'd like to welcome you to the Umoja Circle. And the purpose of the Umoja Circle is to correct errors where errors are found and to introduce facts where we find that so many people, especially in today's age, who are working on fiction when it comes to who we are as people of African descent. On the first part of this two-part series, I talk about one of the great weapons of the Black Panther Party, and it wasn't their rifles. It was their newspaper, the Black Panther newspaper, and I hope I gave you a good insight on that. Now, at the start of this show, I had a little a memorial to a great Black Panther in her own right, Assata Shakur, who just passed about a month ago here, and she was one of the Black Panther Party, and she was a victim of the COINTELPRO program that I'm going to maybe pass a little bit about later on in this show to tell you that we have Black organizations. One of the things that is said by J. Edgar Hoover, who was the FBI director during that period of time, they got that a building named after him, but he was not a fan of black people. And he said that one of the fears of the Black Panther, of the United States and him, was that the black people will produce a messiah, or an organization will produce a messiah. He saw that in the form of Malcolm. He saw that in the form of Martin Luther King. He also saw that in the form of these young black men and women, teenagers and early 20-year-old activists who he saw as a threat to the established empire, the American empire, but it was a white-facing empire for whites only, white nationalists, the same type of ideology that's rearing its ugly head in 2025 today. Because when they say make America great again, they want to go back to that empire. But the empire excluded people that look like me, people that look like brown, Latino brothers and sisters, Native people, indigenous people. All these folks we were part of the empire, but in a caste system, we were of a lower caste. This is what was created by the Constitution. I did a show on that a couple of months ago, and if you want to look back at one of the shows where I talk about the Constitution was not we the people, even though it said it in words, but the way it was structured was a caste system. We were 3/5 of human beings, and so on and so forth. Even though we had the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, we still had segregation, okay? We still have an apartheid system. So who was the we the people? It wasn't us. And it generated these young black people. They were not just revolutionary and all this, communists. No, that was part of the empire's propaganda method to justify the injustice that was done to them, and like sisters like Assata Shakur. And I hope you understand why we hold in high honor by what you saw in the passionate statement that was done by a white male, okay, who has awakened. And that's what they're afraid of by the MAGAs. When they talk about woke, they ain't worried about black folks being awakened, because black people have always been awakened to this truth. That's why we created the word woke. It is because they want to wake up white people like him to the truth of the empire, not the origin story that you get in schools, in middle school, but the truth of the horror that was done to other people in order to maintain the empire. But tonight now I'm continuing my talk about the Black Panther Party. I ended at the beginning of the history of the Black Panther Party, so let's continue on to the next set of information. The Black Panther Party was created on October 15, 1966 in Oakland, California by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. You saw them in the front of that book I showed you. The party emerged in response to widespread police brutality. Like I said, we are not aggressive. We are reactionary. That's the best you could have for black people is a reaction to white supremacy. So when you're saying that we're racist, you cannot be a racist because we don't run the military. We don't run the government. We don't run the educational system. It's usually white people who have been manipulating those systems from the founding of this country by law. Okay? So the worse a person that are talking about the system, like a Malcolm, or the Honorable Minister Farrakhan and all the Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, they could be reactionary. Bobby Seale, Huey P. Newton, and the Black Panther Party were reaction to the system that was oppressing them and their people. That's the best we could be as black people, not racists. We don't control where white people live. We don't control what white people do in school. Look what's happening. Who's in power today, and look what they're doing in taking books off the shelves. It ain't black people doing that. It's the same white nationalist ideology that have been running America since the beginning of this system. Let's go on. The party, the Black Panther Party was founded again in Oakland, California in October 1966 by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, both male founding members. While Newton and Seale are recognized as the sole official founders, women were essential from the very first year of the Black Panther Party. And I want you to understand that. One of their principles was women's rights. Okay, so all this nonsense about men leading, they understood these strong black men who are put up with any of the people on these podcasts who are talking about what a man is, these men who did the work, okay, who we're talking about in history today, recognize the power of their black women. And that's why those are the folks I listen to, not the folks that I see a lot of these podcasts about male being the leader and all that. Women could be leaders. And as 24 years in the military, I saw a lot of great women leaders. Let's go on to the next. Let's go on to the next one. Here are some of the names of some of the co-founding black women of the Black Panther Party. Elaine Brown, okay, Kathleen Cleaver, there you saw her in the picture in the book, among the earliest high-profile women ministers she was a minister of communication and the central early organizer. Erica Huggins, major leader and director of significant programs, joining in the late 60s. Barbara Easley Cox, Tarika Lewis, and Charlotte O'Neill. We got to honor our women. Asada Shakur. We got to understand that there's always, you cannot have a male principle without a female balance principle, okay? They're not the same, but they have to have that balance, that yin and yang. That means balance. Let's go on. Okay, this is the early headquarters in Oakland of the Black Panther Party. I found that image, okay? Self-sufficient. Let's go on. Self-defense against police violence. Frustrated by unchecked police brutality against black citizens, Newton and Seals wanted organized community patrols and armed self-defense as directed. If the police, you see, the police department started, the American police system started by slave patrol. They wasn't there to protect and serve the black community. They were there to contain and control the black community. Totally different philosophy. So when black people had the police, white Americans with their privilege think that they get the same type of protection and service because there's police in the neighborhood. Yeah, we would like that too, but how it's been always shown is that we have always been used, it's always been black police officers have always in our community been more like an occupational force, and usually white at the time. And they will be unchecked violence. No different than what the Nazis did to the people that they occupied in the ghettos of Warsaw during World War II. They would treat black communities like that, okay? So we have this type of reaction to that by the young men and women of those communities to form these organizations like the Black Panther Party. You're not going to hear this variation of the story. You're going to hear the Empire's version of the story. Let's go on to the next. It was for self-address. Okay. Also, with their newspapers, they would address material inequities. The founders believed formal civil rights did not translate into actual economics and social improvement. They were there in those communities. And so they advocated for full employment, decent housing, quality education for black communities. Sounds familiar? That's what the Black Panther Party was about. Not this organization that you falsely taught by the empire that they were some kind of wild, radical, gun-toting crazies, you know, like the black version of the Ku Klux Klan. We didn't lynch anything. This is what the Black Panther Party is about. History teaches you the truth. Political transformation. The party sought to empower black Americans politically and economically, challenging both white supremacy and internal class exploitation. That's what the Black Panther and a lot of other organizations like CORE and SNCC also, and it was the young who did that. So you young brothers and sisters today in the 20th century or 21st century who think nothing is done, why are we not doing this, or you coming up with these ideas, read your history and you'll see it's already been done and learn the lessons. What did they do right? What did they do wrong? That's why you read, okay? If you just keep on getting your own opinions, because that's all you get in these internet podcasts is opinions, But where's your source of that knowledge? Okay, what's the epistemology? What's the source of the knowledge that you are espousing? I always bring my receipts. Let's go on. Next. Inspiration from global movement, drawing on Malcolm X radicalism, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Torres, he named, the Black Power. He came up with the term Black Power. People, let's go. The anti-colonial theorists like Francis Fanon, their aims were broader than integration. It was total liberation of black people globally. We are not a minority. We are a majority. That's what Pan-Africanism of the Garveyites did during the early part of the 20th century. Black people have always been activists. That's why we were activists in the 2024 elections. But y'all forgot your history and you believed the colonial, the empire and their propaganda, and you did not vote, those of you who are black, and brought on what we got now in our streets in places like Chicago and LA with these crazy people with masks on, okay? No different. That's still white supremacy by another name. But we dealt with these folks. I read about Francis Fanon because I heard it from other black people, not from the white imperialist system. I heard it from other black people like the Black Panther Party when I was young. Let's go on. The Black Panther Party was thus founded as a revolutionary movement to secure dignity, safety, and self-determination for black people and other oppressed groups. It wasn't just about us. We understand that there are other folks that also are oppressed, prioritizing concrete programs alongside militant resistance. Okay? We resisted what was being done to us, the oppression that's being done to us. Why would we're not going to capitulate, we're going to resist. That's what the term means. But how we are shown that resistance is required that we're traitors or disloyal. No, the system was not giving us what it promised us. That's why we had that March of Washington. And what did Martin Luther said in that march? That we hear that the American government gave us a check that said non-sufficient funds. They did not live up to the promises. There were 300 and something different treaties done to Native Americans about the land that they did with the United States government. Did they live up to those treaties? No. So you're going to resist it. You're going to bring up resistance from those young people, usually young. The elders are the wisdom, you know. The young are the activists because they have the young legs. They could go out and do what they have the energy, and that's what Martin Luther King was 20-something years old when he lent his church for Rosa Parks issues. It was young people, okay, that did this stuff, guided by the elders. There is, and we could do it today. Let's go on. This was always our problem, our occupational force who brutalized our people. You're seeing it going on in a wider, broad sense now with this immigration and ICE agents in mass, but this was going on in our communities for generation after generation after generation, going all the way back to the plantation. It was brutality. Let's go on to the next one. Poverty, economic inequality. By the mid-1960s, nearly a third of black Americans lived below the poverty level line, with unemployment and deteriorating housing, especially pronounced in urban ghettos. The first ghettos was done in Venice for the Jews. So it wasn't a black thing, but it was the people in power concentrating those who they think are less of in that community and ignoring the needs of that community, ghetto. That's an island in Venice, okay, that the name comes from. Job opportunity had declined after wartime industry moved to the suburbs. That means white people moved out of the inner cities and got the GI Bills. Black men who fought in that war, World War II, did not get the benefit, even though they were entitled to, because of racism and segregation and all these other white nationalist institutions. Make America Great Again wants to go back to that, okay? But there was always resistance, and we honor the Black Panther parties because that's what they were about, resisting that. But they got attacked by the same imperial system. Let's go on to the next one. There were failures of civil rights reform. These young people were saying all this stuff. While Southern segregation was being dismantled, Northern and Western cities saw little meaningful change, and daily lives of urban black communities remained marked by discrimination, material deprivation, and exclusion from mainstream political. There were mass migrations throughout the 20th century. There were waves of black people who live in the horrors of the South and Jim Crow South that went up to the Detroits and went up to the New Yorks and went out to west to LA, but they were running into the same kind of stuff they found out. I know there was a line in the movie Sinners where the brothers the cousin asked the brother, what was it like? That's why they came back home, because, we're going to deal with the devil we know, because we're going to deal with the devil of racism and segregation that we grew up in. That's why they came back. That's why a lot of people came back to the South, because they found it was no different up north, even though it was supposed to be more liberal, let's just say. Let's go on to the next one. The most famous quote, this was, I brought up the Kerner Commission on this set because after the 1967 Detroit riots where there were literally soldiers on the street, machine gun nests on corner blocks. That's how frustrated black youths were, and of course the imperial system sent its troops in. You think what's going on in New York? I mean, in New York and Detroit and all these other places were going up in flames in the 60s in L.A. Man, the same thing was going on today with these National Guards. But there was a commission in July after the big one the big riot in July of 1967. Lyndon Johnson wanted to know what was going on. Why are these cities going up in Jersey and Chicago going up in flames? So he formed the Kerner Commission with Otto Kerner, who was the governor of Indiana at the time, and he did a study from July, and it came out with this report in February of 1968, February 29 of 1968. Let's go on to this one. The Kerner Commission, formerly the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorder, was established by President Lyndon B. Johnson, like I said, in response to the widespread urban riots in 1960. It was a lot of them. They were 66, 68, but the big one was in Detroit. Its report found that the primary cause of these riots was systemic racism, segregation, and deep social economic inequalities facing African Americans. Duh. We were saying that for generations, but there was a commission that was put up by the United States government to find out why are people being pissed off. We could have the same commission today, and guess what we're going to find? The same issues, okay? Deep social economic inequalities, same problems. Let's go on to the next. White racism is essentially responsible for the explosive mixture which has been accumulated in our city since the end of World War II. This is according to the Kerner Commission. This is why you had organizations like CORE, like SNCC, like the Black Panther Party coming up in retaliation to this oppression. What white Americans have never fully understood, but what the black can never forget, is that white society is deeply implicated in the ghetto. White institutions created it, white institutions maintained it, and white society condoned it. This is from the Kerner Commission. They also gave ways of fixing this, but it was not listened to. Here we got with MAGA doing the exact same thing that was complained about by this report and that came out. I got the book. It's a thick 456-page book that came out in 1968. Let's go on to the next. Unless conditions were remedied, the commission warned the country faced a system of apartheid in its major cities. 1968, folks. Let's go on to the next. Impact and legacy. Despite its urgent recommendations such as jobs, better housing, and education, the report was largely ignored by the federal government at that time. This was Nixon came in there, and then you had the Southern strategy, ignoring black people, focusing on the Southern whites. This is how they responded to it, ignored it, okay? And its prophetic warning about persistent racial inequality remained relevant decades later. Okay, this is 2025. They're pulling black books out of it. They're trying to get rid of black history. They're trying to put us back into place. You got a Supreme Court that's saying, racism is over, okay, ignoring the reality of it, So what if you don't understand the history, then you're doomed to repeat it. Let's go on to the next. Okay, and this is what the rise of the Black Power movement. Young militant activists became disillusioned with the slow pace and the limited scope of the civil rights movement, turning to more radical approach such as armed self-defense, political education, and direct community action. Let's go on to the next. The Black Panther Party founding was thus rooted in the unique challenge of urban African-American life in the mid-'60s, the need for protection from police, remedies for poverty, and the real empowerment beyond formal rights and integration, which was what we all were talking about even in Black History Month today. We got integration. We still walk with signs today. What's the difference today than what was that brother in 1960, that well-dressed brother, of course, in 1960s, okay? Same thing. This is what we had to deal with. What's going on in Chicago today, in LA today? You think we as black people never experienced that? Why you think we were warning you about MAGA in 2024? We lived this. You think, look at this. You think we didn't deal with black troops in our community? That could have been me down there. Okay, I was a kid back during that period of time. This is the world that we lived as baby boomers. This is nothing new for us, but did you ignore us? Do you want to tell us that we just made things up when we say, white supremacy, white nationalists, is evil? Come on, let's go on to the next. The police practices in 1960 Oakland, marked by routine brutality, racial profiling, sounds familiar, and a culture of hostility toward black residents, played a critical role in shaping black activism and fueling the rise of the Black Panther Party. Let's go on. Oakland police was known for aggressive and violent tactics in black neighborhoods, including shootings, beatings, racial harassment, with little accountability. Police forces were seen by many residents as occupying forces rather than protectors, creating deep mistrust and fear within the black communities. No different than what Germans, Nazis did to the Jews in those ghettos in Warsaw in World War II. We were treated the same way in America, the land of the free. Why do you think they want to take the books off the shelves? Why you don't think they want to have black history courses? Because this is going to reveal that this is the white agenda. The white empire was not for us. We made it for us, but it wasn't originally intended for us. Let's go on real quick. The lack of response to complaints about police violence further alienated residents and motivated activists to seek independent oversight and protection, thus the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Let's go on to the next. The Black Panther Party was founded in direct response to police violence, focusing initially on armed citizens patrol to monitor and challenge police behavior, and publicly, the Panther used California open carry laws to observe tactics and protect residents, educating communities. That's why they were walking around with guns. You always see those images, but how it's portrayed is like we just walking around like wild men with guns want to shoot white people. No, it was self-defense for our community, okay? The public action, I'll leave it here, and you can read the rest of this, but I just want to let you know that you got to understand what you've been getting is the black against the empire is what this book tells you about. This is the reason we had Black Panther Party. This is the reason we had CORE. This is the reason we had Martin Luther King's organization, or the Nation of Islam, or the Marcus Garvey movement. It was blacks against the empire that was not for us. And the empire has rose its ugly head in 2025 if you are not blind to what's going on around you today. Of all our studies, history is best prepared to reward our research. This is what Malcolm meant. Learn from your history. Knowledge is power. So until next time, peace, hotep, bye-bye.